Good afternoon and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting for the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment for October 19th. Before we call the meeting to order, just a couple of quick reminders. If you would, please turn your cell phones to silent. If you would like to speak on a case that's pending and you're not an applicant, there are little sheets of paper, little white sheets of paper that you can get outside to fill one of those out and hand to Cindy. So with that, our first order of business is to receive the minutes from the October 5th meeting, and I understand we do have one amendment to those minutes.
Yes, I would need item 5, case number 14,406, the vote to change from I to nay.
And that's regarding your vote on that item?
My vote, yes.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to receive the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes of the October 5th, 2017 meeting. Please cast your votes, please. Apparently Kevin's voting. And the minutes are received. Our next order of business are requests for continuance. I think we have one.
Item number 4, case number 14374 is requesting to defer to November 2nd, 2017.
Is there anyone here that was hoping to be heard on that matter today? I will take a motion.
I so move for the deferral to November 2nd, 2017 of item 4D4, 14,374.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue case number 14374 to November the 2nd. Please cast your votes, please. And that item is continued.
We have item number 1, case number 14410, application for a special exception to allow the continued use of a mobile home to serve as a temporary second dwelling to relieve a medical hardship in the AA Agricultural District located at 6201 Murphy Lane.
If the applicant's present, please just come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Yes, I'm Sharon Murphy, and I am the person that lives at 6201 North Murphy Lane, and I am requesting a continuance of this medical variance. It not only suits me because I have 2 immediate family members, you know, within rock throw distance basically of where I am, but it's very economical for me. I can't find anything that's comparable price-wise, plus I feel safe where I'm at since I do have family and it's on a dead-end street. I'm on acreage. It's nice and quiet. So I would appreciate your approval. Thank you.
And you're requesting the ongoing hardship for a period of 3 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
An extension for 3 years?
Yes.
Is there anybody here that wants to be heard on this matter today? I'd note for the record that staff indicates that all the documentation that was submitted with the application indicates that the medical hardship requirement was substantiated. This has been something that's been continuing for a while, so I think staff's pretty familiar with that. So, additional comment?
The application indicates this is the 4th extension. So, was your aunt the family member that you've been watching all this time?
Actually, my nephew's the one that takes care of the property because the property did belong to me and I am selling it to my nephew. So he takes care of the mowing and all that kind of stuff, although we've been kind of lax this year because he had a heat stroke and I had a drug reaction. So it's, you know, but we're maintaining.
But you're caretakers for your aunt?
No, I'm the person that I'm with a disability. My sister-in-law lives in front of me. She's here today.
Normally it's a family member that does it on behalf of the person that requires the care. So you are the person that is receiving the care from your family?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I would make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve case number 14410 to extend a medical hardship for a period of 3 years. Please cast your votes, please. And your application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Item number 2, case number 14411, request of Oklahoma Natural Gas Company for a variance to the maximum fence height and fence material in the DBD Downtown Business District located at 401 North Harvey Avenue. I might add that this was approved this morning at the Downtown Design Review Commission.
The applicant's here. Please just come forward and give your name and address for the record. Tell us about the application.
Daniel Lemieux, Oklahoma Natural Gas, 401 North Harvey. We're asking for a variance to screen in our generator and also a variance for the type of material we're using.
Is there anyone here that wants to be heard on this matter today? We've seen these applications several times. Dealing with these, there's a conflict in the code here as it relates to this particular area that requires you to conceal the equipment, but you can't have a fence above a certain size.
Right.
Sounds like a hardship to me.
Yes, and this morning, I listened to the hearing, and the DVD, Downtown Business District, the meeting was approving that and recommending approval. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I move for the approval.
I like that.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve case number 14411. Please cast your votes, please. And the application is approved.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Item number 3, case number 14377, appeal of William Jefferson of the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the denial of a certificate of appropriateness for fencing, new front and east side doors, new garage door, and outdoor kitchen located at 205 Northwest 32nd Street.
The application, yep. Okay, just come forward and say all that at the microphone, please.
The applicant is present, and my name is Jeff Trevelyan. I'm his counsel in this matter, but he is present and would like to be heard on that.
Okay, what's your address, just so we have that? And, yeah, stand in front of the microphone there.
Okay. My office address is 210 Park Avenue, Suite 2700.
Thank you.
Oklahoma City.
Okay, tell us about your application.
So I was requesting a variance, requesting a certificate of appropriateness after the fact for changes that were made prior to seeking a CA. Okay. The changes were done in 2009 and 2010. I'd been advised by an architect at the time that the work for the HP Commission that had been administratively approved. Found out later on that apparently had not. Some of the items that had been administratively approved.
Pardon me just a minute. Could we, perhaps the attorney could sit down and the applicant could stand in behind the microphone so we could hear him?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There were a number of other items that had not been approved, but the code has since changed, and those no longer needed to be dealt with. But the remaining items, specifically the ones that are listed, the fence, it is too tall on the sides, the east and west. However, we made a very specific and lengthy request with significant reasoning for a variance. I don't know if you guys are fluent in the reasons behind that request, but
What we've been provided in our packet. We're aware of what we've been provided in our packet.
okay. And specifically, Denny Phillips, the defendant that was accused of ordering the executions of the murder.
That information was provided by staff. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe you provided that information to staff,
Yes.
correct? Yes, so we've reviewed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then regarding the front doors, at the time, my neighbor directly to the south and one house over had the exact same front door. I was probably naively arrogant at the time that I bought my house and made the changes. However, I put up the exact same front door that person has. And under number 3, it says new front and east side doors. The east side door is on the front porch also, and it's really just a second side door, or a second front door, if you will. They are both solid doors. They're wood, and the primary deviation between those doors and previous doors that were on the houses, there's no glass in them. So I have a solid door, which is identical to one directly across the street. And I know that this is not the venue for that, but it's identical to one across the street and many others in the neighborhood. The garage door is a metal garage door rather than wood. However, it does have a veneer where it appears to be wood. There are approximately 50% of the garage doors on my street are also metal. However, they don't look like wood. And then the outdoor kitchen is not visible from the street. And it is in the backyard.
Mind if I ask a few questions
Please.
about what you just described?
Yes.
You had the fence installed with your contractor or whatever, architect. What was the fence before it was replaced?
To the west, it was a 6-foot stockade fence where the wood was old and deteriorating.
Yes, and the east was what?
So there's 2 east fences. One is between my backyard and my driveway, which is, the prior fence was not visible from the street. It was metal, black wrought iron, probably 3 feet tall.
Okay.
The other fence to the east, which separates my yard from my neighbor's, and is visible from the street, is identical to the fence that I put around the entire perimeter of my property, and it is also too tall. It's not my fence, though.
Okay, so you installed the side fences are 8 feet, correct? And they're supposed to be 6 feet, and that's your...
Correct.
You're asking, you're appealing on the issue of the difference between the 6 and 8, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And that fence in the picture above is the one that separates my yard from my driveway.
Right, and I'll let you all go, you and your lawyer argue all that. I'm just asking for what it was. And as to the door, what was the door that when you bought the house, what was the door? Did you keep a picture of it, or what was the condition of the door? What were the materials of the door?
It was wood and glass. During the remodel, it was either damaged or vandalized. The contractors that were working at my house would say vandalized. I'll say damaged or vandalized. There was probably 12 to 16 glass panels in each door. So it was glass and wood, and the door that I have now it looks similar, but where there was glass previously, there's just solid wood panels.
So you have a solid wood door,
Yes,
is that
ma'am.
correct? Thank you. And your garage was, what was the garage door condition? What was it when you replaced it?
It had windows in it. I do not recall if it was wood or not. My understanding was that, that historic garage doors were wood. However, most of the ones on my block were metal. So I thought, naively, that...
Okay, thank you.
And in each one of those instances, my objective was to remove glass and windows from exterior surfaces that would allow people to see in, both my garage and into my house.
Reason for that objective?
Yes, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and sometimes represent people that are not popular, and sometimes represent people that, and specifically Denny Phillips ordered several executions, and there was a good faith belief that he was going after other people for a while. He'd broken into police officers' home in Tulsa, stole some uniforms and radio, and the intention, or the belief, at least by the DA's office and others, that his intention was to come down here and kill the only living witness that observed the executions, and I was representing that living witness.
One thing you said just a minute ago was that you made the changes in about 2010.
Yes.
After an architect said it had been administratively approved. So after the changes had been administratively approved, what was that architect's name? Do you recall?
I don't. She had just stopped working for the city and was the advisory architect for the HP Commission at the time. Pardon? Not Catherine Montgomery, one before her. Excellent. Yes, Ms. Osborne.
And I'm assuming that you had an architect involved. Did you pull a building permit of any kind during this process?
I can't recall exactly what she did. I mean, I did have a remodel permit, yes. I don't know what she did as far as getting things approved.
So you did obtain a building permit for the remodel from the city of Oklahoma City?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that permit by chance?
If it's not in my packet, then I don't know.
Okay.
And I say yes, that's my recollection.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't pull it, but I believe that it was.
Is there anything else as it relates to the application before I ask for some questions of a member of staff that we should know or you want to comment on?
No, not unless you need more information from me.
Board members, good?
No, I think you're getting ready to request Katie, and I've got questions for her too.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Okay. Give us just a minute.
Okay.
Katie, would you be so kind as to...
I'm Katie Friddle. I'm staff to the Historic Preservation Commission.
So, Katie, in reviewing the record as such, there's a number of questions that arise for me. And just in the nature of order, I'm going to start in October. If I can find it. Here it is. If we can, let's start with we'll kind of go through the application as it was presented. The first thing that was discussed were the conversion of the single doors to the French doors in the back. That's what's addressed in the application. There was no objection to that change.
Correct. That was approved.
Okay. So that item was approved. The next item that was brought up was the installation of the fence. And as the applicant commented, has there ever been an instance where, and is it your belief that the code is trying to interpret the special circumstance? It uses the term unique circumstances. Are unique circumstances those that are attributable to the property or those that are attributable to applicants?
The Commission has limited those to physical characteristics of the property and the site. You know, we frequently have people say, I need a bigger garage because I have a really big car, or, you know, various things that have to do with kind of their lifestyle, their personal circumstances. But the Commission has limited unique circumstances to things that have to do with reasons that a guideline cannot physically be met at the site or is inappropriate for the site and the property.
Well, no, wait. Okay, so there's a couple of things there. One is we're saying that there are special circumstances or unique circumstances attributable to the property, but it's the individual circumstances that lead to those. So I have a big family, I need a big car, so I need a bigger garage.
Oh, no, I'm saying the Commission would say that's not applicable. I'm saying we frequently have people make that request.
I
and
see.
The Commission says, no, that's not, you know, if you bought a house with a garage that's too small for your car, then that's kind of yours to deal with. When they do approve things with unique circumstances, such as with fencing, they've approved higher than usual fences, for instance, when a residential property abuts commercial or some other kind of high-intensity use. They've also approved them when there was a steep drop-off from one property to another, so that a 6-foot fence in one yard is actually only 3 feet high in the neighboring yard. Physical kind of characteristics like that.
Okay. And when you guys are making your assessments, you're making these things on an individual property basis, is that correct? So you're looking at the historical character and nature of that individual property within the district, to the best of your ability.
Yes. I mean, the fence guideline, the 6-foot requirement is throughout the historic district. So that's not so much a case-by-case, but we would evaluate any identified unique circumstances on a case-by-case basis.
Right. But the materials would be relevant to the historical character, right? The materials of the fence? It's just the height that's consistent throughout the district, is that right? What's the reason for, and is that a standard or is that a guideline?
That is, let me look at what the We have lots of shoulds and shalls, so let me double check before I say.
I'm sensitive to mandatory versus permissive language in the standards and guidelines. There are some things that shall be, and there's no ambiguity. There are other places where the commission has discretion based on circumstance. When it comes to fences and fence walls shall not exceed 8 feet.
Yep, so that's
Now-
a shall, that's a standard.
And then just for the instance of the record here, you're quoting section 2.8.13 with the, okay.
Yep.
So that's a good point, but how do you reconcile that with 2.8.16, which says materials for fence and fence wall should be consistent? What is that guideline designed to try and differentiate between?
So I think that the height is something that is, it's a black and white measurement and kind of an evaluation of this is the height that allows people to have that privacy and that sort of sense of security in their backyard, but is not so high that it obstructs views of the historic structures and disrupts the character of the historic district. So that's just kind of a uniform thing throughout. The materials is a should, I think, to allow a little bit more discretion if there were some other materials present on the historic structure or historic evidence that some other fencing material had been used. We've got old, chicken wire fences and all sorts of things that if someone had evidence that that was their historic fence material or some other material used on the site, the commission would have the ability to approve that.
Okay. Do you have a
I
question?
have a question. These are part of the sustainability guidelines, are they? Is that standard within?
Yeah, these are within the design and sustainability guidelines for historic districts in Oklahoma City, which are adopted as if laid out therein in the ordinance. Yep.
Okay, and in what year was that adopted?
They were done in 2012 with an update in 2014, but I don't believe this portion was updated. So.
And prior to that adoption, what was the standard for the
I believe
fences?
the fence height has been the standard for a very long time.
Okay. And then in other parts of the city, there's an 8-foot standard on the sides. Is
Yes,
that correct?
that's my understanding.
So if any exception were granted or special circumstances or unique circumstances were determined, it cannot exceed 8 feet. Is that your opinion?
Correct.
Any other questions about the fence? So the next item that's discussed in this October 1, 2014 staff report is the replacement of the front and east side doors. One of the comments that the applicant made was that it's the same front door as a neighbor. Explain to us how staff reviews things like doors as opposed to the fence item we just discussed.
So with doors, they are very much attributed to the architecture and the historic significance of an individual structure. You may have a row of houses that are identical, that each have different doors and had those different doors historically. You may have a wide array of architectural styles in an area, and they all have different doors that are appropriate to their style of architecture. So first and foremost, what the commission looks at when they consider replacement of a door is what the historic door was, if we know. And if we know what the historic door was, that is what is to be replaced. It's to go back with something as close as possible to that historic door. The fact that a door design has been used in other places across the street or throughout the neighborhood does not necessarily make that door appropriate for that house. When the historic door is gone or when we're not sure if the existing door is historic or not, then they will look to a design that is compatible with that style of architecture. You have certain doors that you see on a Tudor Revival house versus a Craftsman style house, and so they will ask the applicant to propose a door that is compatible with the architecture of the house.
So if you can't find historical evidence of exactly what existed on the house, given its historic character, then that's the kind of fallback position of the commission. Okay. So in that, what style of home do you guys, how do you identify the applicant's home?
You know what? So this is kind of a Tudor Revival with the steep pitched roof, prominent chimney on the front, clipped gable over the porch. Yeah, it's in that. That's what a lot of Edgemere homes are.
And was it staff's opinion that the door that was replaced does not fit that style? Is that your view of the staff's report's opinion? I mean, is that...
The door that was installed, and I'm sorry, it's been a while since I've looked at the, I think the kind of first and foremost consideration of staff at the time was that we had photos of the previously existing door that appeared to be a historic door. Whether it was the original door that was on the house the day that the very first owner moved in, we don't know, but it is a historic style that we see frequently throughout this and other districts on houses of this era and style. So the kind of initial response of staff and the commission was a replacement door really should more closely approximate the historic 15-light door that was there previously.
Let's assume that it was not the historic door. Was it staff's opinion that that door fit the architectural style of the house as a Tudor revival house? That's the fact that there's divided light glass within those panels as opposed to wood. Is that a true architectural distinction from staff's perspective?
So yeah, definitely the transparency of a door is a distinctive characteristic. It's less of an impact on an entrance like this that's off to the side and not visible from the street, but doors that are solid versus doors that are transparent and reflective is a significant feature for the district and for the commission. I think I lost track of the rest of your question.
You've answered it, that's fine.
I have a couple questions. I did know you cannot see the door from the street, correct?
So it faces to the side, which is not unusual for this style of house, and it's under a pretty substantial porch. I'm sure from certain angles it can be seen. Obviously, it had to be to some extent because code enforcement took note of it and got photos from the public right-of-way and that sort of thing. But it's not as prominent as the door on say a house with a typical front porch where everything's facing the street.
Now, I don't think you had any problem with the materials. Is that correct?
Right. Wood doors are allowed for front doors. It was the design of the door.
It was the design. If it had some glass in it, would it have to have the same number of panes of glass or what?
So it's about the transparency. It's also about the proportions of the glass. This was a 15-light door, so it was not 5 rows of 3 panes of glass, so they were very vertical in their orientation and kind of match up with the historic windows that are divided light. So there's sort of a relationship there in the design of the windows and the door. And I would just note that at the meeting that the applicant attended, I think the commission raised a lot of these concerns and encouraged the applicant. It was not denied at the first discussion. It was continued with the instruction that the applicant consider other designs, come back and present something else, and the applicant never came back. So the door was really denied because no additional information was ever presented and not because that door was necessarily inappropriate. Although to me, the proportions of the door that was installed are not appropriate to the...
Now, you've heard, and I think in the packet was also before you, I think you had that information on the fact that he is a criminal defense lawyer and he was claiming security issues and other things regarding the door and needing not to have the glass because people might kick it in and for privacy reasons. Is that something that could be considered for unique or other kinds of special circumstances?
You know, several security features were approved, including security cameras, I believe, and additional lighting on the exterior of the structure. Those were all things that could be done within the parameters of the guidelines. We struggle with things like doors because no matter what, you still have a house full of glass windows. And if someone really wants to get in, they're going to kick through a wood door just as easily as they would break a piece of glass. So the commission typically doesn't consider an individual property owner's. However, you know, obviously there's lots of sympathy for someone's circumstances, but that hasn't been viewed as a unique circumstance to justify.
Yeah, that was why, that's why I asked earlier. There's no reason the code, for any reason, would contemplate a unique or special circumstance of an applicant. That doesn't even make sense. The code is going to contemplate things where, frankly, is a better example. She gave a better example than I could come up with, which would be an instance where you've got a residential historic home that abuts a commercial district. Well, there's nothing that they can do about that, but that is a unique circumstance that makes it different from the lot next door that abuts a residential and would merit at least a discussion over, this is unique, we should allow them a little higher fence to obstruct that kind of conflicting use. So, I mean, I don't know why the code, and you said it, but I don't see anywhere in the code or any record that we've been provided, unless the applicant has something where it shows that the Historic Preservation Commission or staff has considered a person's unique circumstances when making a decision about the historical context or a unique circumstance with the property. So, any other questions about the doors? Okay. Garage doors, pretty similar deal. The staff, the commission, code enforcement, we're looking at things that are specific to that property, and kind of the same thing. If we can't find historical evidence to support what existed prior, then we're going to use architectural restrictions of that style of home or architectural guidelines for that style of home to decide what is and is not appropriate.
Correct.
Okay. Anything different about garage doors from front doors?
There's different allowances for materials on garage doors. I believe, I'm not seeing a picture of it in my materials here. I think we did have a picture of an older garage door that was a very typical style. It's called style and rail. That's just a grid with inset wood panels. And so, again, similar to doors, the preference would be that you go back with that style of garage door. And we see people are approved to install that style of door all the time. Again, just because another garage door is present somewhere else in the district doesn't necessarily make it appropriate for any particular site. And just because a certain garage door material is present elsewhere, it may also not be in compliance, or it may have been grandfathered in and predate the district.
I have one question. I think you said something at the meeting that it could have been metal with wood.
Yes.
Overlay or something.
Garage doors can be wood. It can be wood veneer with a concealed metal frame, or it can be composite materials including fiberglass or wood fiber. Now, I forget exactly what the overlay was on the door, but again, I think that was one where the commission asked for some additional information, looking at possibly changing the design of the door, and then never received any additional information.
So as to the materials of the door, not looking at the design, do you have any objection to the materials of his current door, a garage door?
Refresh my memory of what it actually was.
You don't have the information back, probably.
I think there's no way to know because the applicant never came back and provided that information. So we're assuming that you've got a metal frame door. What the veneer is, we don't know. We do know that there are issues with the style, but we don't know the material. And I don't think it's necessary to address that right now. But I think that's where you stand right now.
Yeah. One of the things that caught my attention about the garage door in the report is that it says the proposed replacement doors do not appear to be incompatible with the historic structure. However, when documentation of the historic door exists, the guidelines require that a replacement door be based upon that design. The proposed replacement doors also use a material that, while not prohibited by the guidelines, is not typically approved for garage doors for use on historic structures, only on additions and new construction. That's a lot to absorb. Break that down for me a little bit from a staff perspective as it relates to the guidelines and the standards.
Sure. So if there were no doors on the garage, or if the door on the garage was clearly a modern, metal door that you see in other parts of the city, and we knew it was not the historic door, then the proposed design would probably be acceptable. It's not out of the realm of what would be appropriate at a detached garage that's set pretty far back from the street, kind of a paneled, gridded design. But we have images that show what appears to be a historic style and rail garage door. So the preference is to go back with that historic garage door style, since we do know what it was.
Have there been instances where the commission and staff has recommended approval or approved a garage door that, just as you described, is not necessarily appropriate, but they've approved it anyway? Can you think of instances where that's occurred?
I wouldn't say that they've approved ones that were appropriate. We've approved garage doors that were, where it would be that the historic garage door is gone, so they approve a style that's compatible with the garage in the house, but not one that would be considered inappropriate.
Okay, but have they approved ones that appear to be incompatible?
No, I don't.
You can't
Not
recall?
intentionally, no.
Okay.
By the commission's assessment, no.
Okay. Other questions on the doors?
On the material, that language about composite materials including fiberglass or wood fiber, we infer that that means including but not limited to. So you could use an overlay that was some material other than fiberglass or wood fiber, but we did not know enough at the time that we were reviewing the application about the product on the door to say whether or not it met those guidelines for materials.
Okay. The last item, unless I'm missing something, is the outdoor kitchen. The concern there, as evidenced from the hearings previously, was essentially came down to the height of the structure. There was some discussion about pergolas versus structures. What makes a pergola under the guidelines and standards?
A pergola typically is freestanding and not attached to another structure, and is going to have an open roof, like what you see there, the one that was on the back of the house. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they will tie in at some point just for stability, but it's not a true addition to the house that's built out, tied into the walls all the way around.
Is that pergola there, is it visible from the street?
So that is not. That is on the rear of the house. And
what is the height of that pergola?
I don't know if I know. Let me look real quick.
Are you aware of the height of that pergola?
I would guess somewhere between 14 and 17 feet.
14 and 17 feet?
I thought it was 10.
That's a 6'8" door.
I thought
right
the
there.
rec was those. If it had been 9 feet, it would have been approved, right? And I thought it was over 10 feet or something. And I think if it just been lowered another foot or so, it might have.
Well, you're talking about you're talking about the outdoor kitchen. Yes. Yeah.
So that one on the rear of the house was approved, and I don't recall the exact height, but it met guidelines that talk about
so
the
it was shorter than 9
feet. The pergola to the roof of the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But the other one, that was the issue, is that the pitch of it essentially took it over that, and it's 9 feet, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a limitation of 9 feet, and then there's guidelines about visibility from the street. So the commission's suggestion in that first meeting was to look at making that roof flat. So you would still have the outdoor kitchen with the roof over it, make it flat, and that would minimize the visibility and potentially get it under the height requirement.
From the staff and the HP Commission's perspective, there's this discussion about the potential for moisture or ice to be held between the kitchen structure and the brick wall. Why is that a concern of the Commission?
That's something that is included in the guidelines. We have language throughout the guidelines that talk about things that should be done to maintain the physical structures. Historic preservation is not just about aesthetics. It's also about actually physically preserving the buildings, and there are things that people can do to a building today that cause damage, that trap moisture in, whether it's a foundation, whether it's coating historic brick and mortar with something that traps moisture, whether it's putting holes into, wood trim that shouldn't be there, all sorts of things. So that type of guideline, I would say, is throughout the document, just because when you put a new structure up against an old structure, there's the potential there to cause damage and cause harm to the masonry. I would say that's something that we kind of always just tack on as like, by the way, when you're approved, make sure you don't hurt the building by doing X, Y, and Z. That wasn't really the overarching concern with this this particular proposal.
The concern, ultimately, it sounded like from the hearing, was that the height exceeded what was allowable under the guidelines.
Yes.
And that, too, the height is a shall, not a may. It's a guideline, not a standard. Is that correct?
Yes. The language about the height of pergolas is shalls. Shall not exceed, it shall not exceed 8 feet above the finished floor height of the structure, and the height of the pergola should not exceed 9 feet, the overall height. So that's a should and a shall. I would want to check our actual document and not my cut and pasted, to make sure that
and actually, I'm glad you just said that, because one of the things that was referenced earlier was the effective date of the standards and guidelines for the HP districts, and that effective date is July 11, 2014. Is that the current?
Yes, that's the most recent.
And she asked a great question. Are there any other issues besides the fence that prior to the adoption of this in 14 would have diverged from the standards and guidelines that are being applied in the reports we have before us?
I believe all of the language for the garage doors was the same, although we made a clarification on pedestrian versus vehicular doors for garages and in that most recent change. Some of the language for pergolas and decks and things is new. Some of that was clarified so that we would be able to administratively approve some more of those items rather than every single pergola and deck that can't be seen from the street having to go to the commission. So
was the height the same?
I believe that is a new specification. I don't think we used to.
This was built in 2009 and 10, right? When was this built?
It was.
The backyard was done in 2010. Everything else was done in 2009.
The backyard was done in 2010.
Correct.
Okay. So the pergola was constructed in 2010.
But the application was received August 5th, so we review it as if it had not already occurred because none of it had been reviewed or approved or permitted. So
that's okay. Additional questions for staff? No? Thank you very much. Applicant, or your counsel, do you guys have anything to add, or?
Just a couple things.
Okay, please.
I've sat through a number of these, and my observation is I'm beyond open-minded compared to most applicants. And when I didn't return with the additional information, I'd taken a court case that was set across the street at 1:30. I thought I was going to be able to get over there and get it held and get over here. I showed up around 1:40, 1:45 that day and had missed the docket. So I literally just didn't make it.
Which meeting was that?
It was the first setting that was here.
So before the Board of Adjustment or before the?
Before the board.
Okay.
And up to that point, we were under the belief that the board could potentially overrule the commission, or that we would have to lose here also and then get to another venue to be able to get the things approved, specifically like metal garage doors and other things. And so I don't know that we fully appreciate our opportunity.
Yeah. The board's hearings here are de novo, so we can affirm, modify, or reverse the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission. Certainly that's the purpose of this, is to provide a different forum to ensure that objective standards are held and reviewed and that sort of thing. Yeah. Any other comments on the application itself?
No.
Board members?
I'm going to find that regarding your fence that you're out of compliance, right, and there's no ambiguity there from me.
And so 8 feet is okay?
6 feet is okay.
Okay.
The guideline specifically says 2.8.12 fences and fence walls shall not exceed 8 feet in height at the back property line or alley.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you've seen these guidelines and standards.
I have, yes.
2.8.13 fences and fence walls shall not exceed 6 feet in height on the side or front-facing locations.
And may I ask for clarification on one of those issues? Is the fence between my backyard and my driveway, is that considered the side also?
I'm going to defer to Katie.
The rear is anything on the rear property line, and the side is anything running up and down the side property lines. So if it's going parallel to your driveway, essentially, perpendicular to the street, that's considered the side.
But-
I'm not sure if I'm...
So I essentially have two fences, then I have one that separates my property from my neighbor's property? That fence right there just separates my backyard from my driveway and not the property line.
That would be considered a side fence.
Okay.
Thank you. Regarding your front doors, because there's photographic evidence of the previous doors, and I'm sympathetic to your, desire to feel safe in your home, and I want you to feel safe in your home, but your doors are not in compliance. And again, the language is mandatory, shall be, and particularly in light of the fact that there is photographic evidence of what was previously there. So I'm sympathetic to your desire to make sure that you're secure in your home, but I cannot concur that the doors you've got now put you in compliance.
And so is there a finding that the doors that were previously there are the historic doors?
That's not before us.
Okay.
What's before us are the doors that were changed. So we're not in a position to know whether or not the doors that existed were either historic doors or whether or not they were approved as historic replacements.
Okay.
We don't know that.
Okay.
But what we're told is that those doors met the architectural standard for that period of home, and that the new doors do not.
Okay. And so similar, the same doors as before should be able to be approved?
That would be something that would require you to complete a certificate of...
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But it would seem to me, and I'm speaking a little out of turn, but I'm trying to be fair.
Understood.
It would seem to me that the commission was trying to indicate to you that they were supportive of those doors.
Okay.
They needed additional information.
Okay. Thank you.
Regarding your garage door, because you never came back and provided additional information to HP, there's some things we don't know. I'm assuming that the doors that are installed have a metal frame. What we don't know is what's, what the veneer material is and whether it's in compliance. I think, it may be open to discussion, perhaps not, the style, whether it's consistent with what we would expect or what the city would expect for the neighborhood. But for sure, we don't know what the veneer is, and we're assuming that you've got a metal frame door. So that is an open question for me that would need to be answered before, either supported what you've done or opposed what you've done. Your outdoor kitchen is in compliance. Your pergola, your structure over it is not.
Okay.
And the height is not in compliance, and the abutment to an existing structure appears that it may not be. And again, I don't know that, that is known for certain, but it is certainly something I think, that there needs to be some certainty about whether its proximity to the historic structure puts you in compliance or not.
My comments would be several. I'd like to hear if there are any additional comments by your attorney to add or subtract. But before that, my inclination would be, we have the authority to remand this back to the historical preservation people, I believe, if we wanted, and he could provide that information to them. Is that correct, Attorney?
I believe that's unique to the Historic Preservation Commission ordinances, is the ability to remand if there's, and I believe it's only under the circumstance of new information.
It's only if there's any new information, and we don't have any new information today. Okay. But we may not have enough information today, though. I don't think we have it all.
Enough information as it pertains to specifically?
The garage material.
Well, I think one thing that I'm not totally sure that I'm convinced is accurate is which group of standards and guidelines would be applied. So this group of standards and guidelines were adopted and were effective July 11th, 2014. I mean, the application was initially filed was heard October 1st, 2014, and it was filed August something. Does somebody have clarification on that? I think the original application was filed in August, which means these would be the standards and guidelines that were effective at the time the application was filed. So that would be what would be applied. So, and I'm almost certain I read that the original application was submitted in August. Is that accurate, applicant? You know?
I believe that it was previously submitted a number of years before, however, voluntarily dismissed, which my understanding procedurally allowed it to remain current and pending.
I can't comment on that.
And so I think it was actually a number of years before 2014, but it got back on the docket in 2014.
We received a new application, date stamped August 5th, 2014. I should have in here previous applications.
And Katie, just to be clear, is this home located in Heritage Hills East?
This is Edgemere Park.
Edgemere Park.
Yes. So our staff report notes that an application had been submitted several years prior but had been withdrawn by the applicant. So for us, once an applicant withdraws their application, it's gone, case closed. When we get a new application in, we have to treat that as if the work had not already been done. We review it like any other new case. So this one came in August 5th, 2014.
When was the new application? When was the original one filed?
I don't have that date here. I've got...
And to clarify, I think when we withdrew it, it was considered pending for purposes of enforcement, maybe not processing. Or at least that was the reasoning behind it.
The previous one, it's dated 2009. I've got emails here from January 2010, looking to see if something has an actual date stamp on it. I don't believe this one ever, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, it went to the commission October 7th, 2009. It was continued to December 2nd, 2009. And then we have an email from the applicant dated January 28th, 2010, stating, I would like to withdraw my application to avoid denial. I will file a new or amended application in the near future. And I don't believe we received anything again until that 2014 date. So I can't answer how code enforcement views that when an application has been, I know that they give people time while they're in the application process to allow them to get through hearings, and if they get a continuance to come back for that. Once it's been withdrawn and closed, I don't know that they consider it to still be pending. But I can't answer that.
The application that's pending before us was ultimately filed in August of 2014. And the hearing before the commission, the original hearing before the Historic Preservation Commission, which is before us for a de novo review, originated on October 1st, 2014. So for the sake of creating a clear opinion on it, I am going to interpret the July 11th, 2014 standards and guidelines as being the effective guidelines that are before us and that we would use to render a decision on this matter. And if you look at those, I want to read this again, relating to the garage doors. This is section 3.9.13. New garage vehicle doors in all other districts. So, and that was, I was asking you a rhetorical question, because in the guidelines and standards there are specific references, interestingly, to Heritage Hills, but there are not specific references to other districts. So it's fair to assume here, I'm talking about just within this set of provisions,
yes,
that all other districts would include Edgemere Park. Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. New garage vehicle doors in all other districts, including Edgemere Park, presumably, may be solid wood, wood veneer, or with a constructed metal frame or composite materials including fiberglass or wood fiber. Doors should first match the historic design. When the historic design is unknown, then the doors should match the design of other historic garage doors used in the respective district. A panel design may be appropriate. So I interpret that, despite testimony here, that the garage door is a different issue than the front and side doors per these guidelines, in that other doors across the street do matter.
Well, and that was the observation I was making, because he never came back to HP and told them what the composition of the garage doors was. We're assuming it's metal frame. The rest we just don't know. We're presuming. And I think, the style, as Katie has testified, is consistent, in essence, with the rest of the neighborhood.
So this was one where I think, again, we had photos showing the previous garage door that appeared to be a historic style of garage door that's very typical to this style of garage in this district and many of our districts. So without evidence to suggest that that was not the historic door, we would first look at the language that says that doors should first match the historic design. When the historic design is unknown, then you look to other design references.
That's an objective application of
And I was unaware that you had photographic evidence of the previous garage doors. I had heard that you had photographic evidence of the doors on the front of the house.
I do not have a picture here with me without digging through this file some more, but our considerations say that pictures on file with the Oklahoma County Assessor illustrate a style and rail garage door with glazing in the upper row as of 2007.
And in that case, since there's evidence of what the original doors were, the replacement doors should be consistent with that design.
Seems clear. It seems clear to me from the guideline if that's true.
Well, I would disagree that there's evidence before this council that we have what the actual door consisted of, either the front door or the garage door. So further, what other evidence is before the council that's unknown to the council or the commission at this time is the approvals of neighbors and the exceptions made for neighbors and their materials, because actually one part of the fence was not built by my client. He just added to match the neighbor's fence. That neighbor has not been cited. We don't know if that neighbor had ever gotten a certificate of appropriateness for that particular fence.
But that's not before us.
I understand that. So what we're saying here is basically there isn't a guideline that addresses every single issue. And if this commission would remand this matter maybe back to the Historical Preservation Commission, we could answer some of those questions that are unknown at this particular point.
There, in my opinion, and I can only speak for myself, but in my opinion, there are very clear. We have seen a number of cases, as you might imagine, I'm sure as your client would imagine, on issues that deal with discrepancies between whether something is or is not in historic context and fits in or does not fit in with the historic nature of a district. Stuff like this comes before us with a lot of regularity. And there have been instances where there are subjective applications of those ordinance, those guidelines, those standards to a particular application that are really difficult to overcome for the commission. In my opinion, we have seen those. These are not difficult issues. The pergola is taller than the mandatory height restriction that is a shall within the guidelines. The height of the fence is higher than the allowed height within the guidelines. That is a shall. These are mandatory things. The evidence that's before us now suggests that, to the best of their ability, without additional information being provided from the applicant, that the subjective application of the rest of the standards and guidelines are on point. There are issues here that I think could create ambiguity, but the way they were applied in this case to these facts suggests that they were objective in nature. So I don't agree with you that we don't have enough evidence to know. We don't have to. We don't have evidence to the contrary in a de novo review, except that we have clear from your client's testimony statements that there are instances, especially relating to the fence and as it relates to the height of the pergola, that they exceed the allowable requirements. If you look through these standards and guidelines, you'll find other areas that are ambiguous. They don't exist here. They just don't exist here. So I appreciate that there would be a desire to remand it. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I'm in favor of affirming the decision of the HP Commission on the basis that these guidelines are objective in nature. The way they've been applied is objective. A review of the facts show that they were essentially applied objectively, that there was historic evidence on doors and garages, that the Commission considered that evidence before they ruled, and as a result of that, they made a decision, even in spite of the applicant's absence, as referenced in the staff report that day, to deny it for those reasons. So,
I concur and would make a motion to deny the applicant's request to overturn the denial of a CA by the Historic Preservation Commission, and that the Historic Preservation Commission's denial of a CA in this case be upheld.
Before I make a second on that, I'd really like to get a clarification from counsel for the applicant regarding, is there any new evidence that they are trying to introduce that might make a difference on whether or not it's remanded, as it would require, and counsel for city on that? Can you qualify that?
Do you have any additional information that you'd want to provide that was not already provided to the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the actual property?
Well, the only new information regarding the actual property, this may or may not be the only new information, but it's the only new information I know, is that a portion of the fence built by the applicant was built to match that already existed there from a neighbor. And so in that particular portion, I'm not sure if that particular evidence is included in the packet.
Had you provided it to staff prior to the meeting?
Excuse me?
Had anything been provided to staff prior to today's meeting about the matching of the neighbor's fence?
No, not prior to today's meeting, no. Okay. Well, we believe that it was in the application. My client believes it was in the application, the original application, and also in the documents provided for the initial appeal. Yes, and in particular, my client was also cited by the city for noncompliance in the criminal court, and the picture used for that particular site was not my client's fence; it was the neighbor's fence. So, so it seems to be selective enforcement here on this particular issue. Now, whether or not I understand what the board is saying here was as far as the objective reasons, the standards of heights and whatnot of the pergola and of the fence. However, some of that existed before any of my client's construction took place.
But you would agree that your client's construction subsequent to that is in violation of those guidelines?
I wouldn't make that conclusion.
Okay. Would you agree that your client's fence that was built subsequent to his purchase of the property matches that of the pre-existing fence that was in excess of the allowable guidelines?
Yes, we would admit that.
So then it's fair to say that that's really the issue. And here's another thing, too. We see instances here that deal with this, or, for example, just with variances, where someone has had an accessory building that exceeds 1,250 square feet, for example, and it's been in their backyard for years. The city's not aware of it. They don't know about it. Nobody's ever informed. It's never been caught by a code enforcement officer. So the neighbor comes in and applies for one, wants a variance for it, and gets denied. and they're upset because the neighbor has one. Well, now the neighbor's probably going to get cited. There are things that just get beyond, from time to time, the observation of city for some period, but that doesn't mean that they're just non-conforming, they're non-compliance items. It sounds like that fence is a great example of it. But you can't come in and add to that and then say, well, because this existed, we should be granted. And to be fair, your client clearly knew that there was a need to file for a certificate of appropriateness to make changes to the exterior of the property. And
I don't hear anything as to new evidence on that. And I think, as I understand from council, if we approve the permit, then they would be able to go back and...
Right, there's nothing to necessarily stop the applicant from going back to the Historic Preservation Commission and applying for a new CA with, a door that might be administratively approvable or might otherwise be able to meet the guidelines. So that's also an avenue too.
Having said that, I second the motion. Did it not? Affirm.
I have a motion and a second to affirm the denial of a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission for case number 14377. Please cast your votes, please. And the decision is affirmed, so essentially your appeal is denied.
That would be all. Thank you.
I suggest you get back with Ms. Fritty over here and try to work with staff, and I think there might be some things that get worked out, given the discussions I've heard today and at the hearings. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda are additional items, of which I'm assuming there are none. Municipal Council. You sure?
Pretty sure. I think so.
Citizens to be heard. Seeing none, other business? I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.